When we are renewed in our minds, we're renewed also in the spirit of our minds as well. That means that God is beginning to develop a lens through which I see the world and through which I see myself. We've got to be willing to let go of those old ones, which means I've got to understand that I have a paradigm. Now, what your paradigm is doesn't matter. I don't need to know that. You just need to understand you don't even know your paradigm. You see the world, and your thinking about the world and about yourself was shaped by your experiences and those who poured into you, but it was not exactly the paradigm that God wanted for you. And so we let go of that, and we do number three, the third thing I want you to tell you, and that is that we ask the Holy Spirit to give us God's paradigm. We say, God, I need to think the way you think. I need to see myself the way you see. I need to see my spouse. Can I tell you that there is the possibility of completely reshaping relationships when we allow God to reshape our paradigm. Not just heavenly relationships, earthly relationships as well. When God tells us, when God says, I want you to love your enemies, that is against the worldly paradigm. It makes no sense to the paradigm that we were inherited out of the world. Love my enemy. That feels vulnerable. That feels like you're just asking me to be a doormat. But God has a different paradigm, and until you understand his commands in the midst of his paradigm, it's going to be confusing to you. So we've got to say, Holy Spirit, come. Come and help me to think the thoughts that you have. Help me to see the life that you have, to see the world through the lens that you have. We've got to cooperate with God, but we've got to humble ourselves and say, God, I probably have some thinking that needs to be changed. Would you come and help me? Ask the Holy Spirit to do that. And here's how we cooperate. We've got to begin to immerse ourselves in what God has given us, his word. Because the more I study, read, memorize, and talk about his word, the more that it begins to shape my thinking. I've got to do this through prayer, but not just the way that most of us have been taught to pray. We have an agenda when we come to God, right? We come with our lens. Oh, God, I'm in need of this. We rarely say, God, what's your perspective? What's your perspective on this? Before I ask for 15 things, maybe you have a different agenda. I'm coming into your presence, and I'm just going to sit and listen for a few minutes about what you might want to say to me. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you room to begin to align my thinking so that I see the world and see you even, God. You know, some of our paradigm about God is false. I did a funeral yesterday, and I was thinking, and this is a small thing, but I was thinking yesterday, or Friday when I was preparing for the funeral, you know, the Bible never talks about death as it is the end of existence. Never. But, you know, we think about death. We've been shaped by a secular mindset that death is the end. Now, we try to hold both of them together, but for God, the only thing that's involved in death is my body's going to wear out. But God never says that I wear out. My life, even the way that I think about myself, am I a spirit clothed with a body, or am I a body that somehow has a spirit? How does God see me? What's more important to God? Do I wake up every morning? Do you wake up every morning and say, as you look in the mirror, this is the temple of the Holy Spirit? Or do you look at it and say, man, I wish cosmetic surgery was cheaper? Those are two different paradigms. Two totally different paradigms. And so here's what I want you to know. John Piper, I love John Piper. He says, our minds have a spirit. Let me just give you this quote. He said, the mind has a spirit. We've been taught sort of in this computer age that our brains are just computers. You know, it's just data going in. He says the mind has a spirit. In other words, our mind has what we call a mindset. It doesn't just have a view, it has a viewpoint. It doesn't just have the power to perceive and detect, it has a posture, a demeanor, a bearing, an attitude, a bent. When we are renewed in our minds, we're renewed also in the spirit of our minds as well. That means that God is beginning to develop a lens through which I see the world and through which I see myself. And that is the power of the Spirit. Can you imagine? We are, in my opinion, in this culture, we are at war with mindsets. Do you realize how powerful we are trying to be? The media and others are trying to influence our worldview. They want your worldview to be a certain worldview. And part of what's going on, if I have one worldview and somebody has another worldview, we can witness the same event and have totally different conclusions. And our culture is so divided today because our worldviews are getting more and more extreme. And this is what I mean by that. We used to say, well, I disagree with you. Now we say, you're the cause of everything bad. We used to say, well, I look at that differently. Now we say, no. The whole world is going to hell in a handbasket because of you. So we're in a place where we're like a married couple in our country, many of us, and we are so polarized against each other, and we've got to humble ourselves and say, God, give us your mindset. Now, here's the worst thing we can do, is that we can assume that my mindset is God's mindset. Well, of course God thinks like me. Well, of course God, if there's anything that we see out of the life of the disciples, we should know this. Let me just ask it this way. Do you think if you were a faithful first century Jew, you would have clung to Jesus as the Messiah? Or would you have been like so many others who would have gone, he just doesn't make sense. He said he was God in the flesh. I think, God, except for your grace and mercy, I would have missed you. I would have missed you before. And the truth is, I'm grateful for my prodigal years in this way. They brought me to my knees so that I could cry out to God. Without the grace of God, I would have missed God. I would have missed his goodness. I would have missed his blessings. So we've got to ask the Lord, would you renew in me my thinking? Would you give me a biblical worldview? Would you give me a kingdom worldview?